All right, welcome to the first sip from the Charlotte FC podcast. Our look at Charlotte FC hosting New England Revolution this Saturday, May 23rd at Bank of America Stadium. Last weekend was a massive bounce back win for Charlotte FC, who found that their scoring boots in a dominant 3-1 thumping of Toronto FC. They kind of cleansed the palate, and they had a rough patch going in. And so now maybe this attack will show what happens when everything clicks. But in this league, there's no time to celebrate. You're going to have a long break after this match because of the World Cup. So I guess the focus is just a quick turnaround, especially facing New England coming to town, the exact same squad that handed them that frustrating 1-0 loss in the stoppage time, which Charlotte actually, for many thought played a pretty decent game there, but they didn't get the points there at all. And I think they neutralized Carles Gil in that game. So we got all that coming in, the World Cup about to hit stage. But joining us today is an American sports icon. I think he does every single sports out there. He's worked for Fox Sports. He's covered World Series, NFL. He's even done NHL games in English, but he is on MLS and Apple TV, play-by-play announcer for the Spanish broadcast, and he's doing the game. It's Francisco X Rivera. Francisco, welcome.
Nick, how are you? Great to see you. Thanks for the invite, and thanks for the great introduction as well.
Sure. All right, so let's talk about this quick turnaround. You play a team almost a month ago. You kind of remember what happened, so that's fresh in their brains. I talked earlier about the loss on the late penalty back at Gillette Stadium. So how do you, thinking about this from an outsider, but also as a player and Dean Smith and all the things, how do you go about attacking this psychologically from Charlotte's perspective?
Well, I think if we want to see the glass half full, I mean, there could be shorter turnarounds. I mean, Atlanta United and Orlando just faced each other over the weekend in league action and then in the cup 2 days later, right? So, there could be shorter turnarounds. So I guess I don't think it'll be much of an issue at this point. I think a month will be more than enough. I think, from what I've seen from New England, they're a very, very compact team. They're a very solid team. They have a lot of weapons in attack. And I think two of the things that I see in terms of similarities between New England and Charlotte, they have a lot of talent, but they pretty much need all of the pieces to click to be able to be successful, right? If one or two things go wrong, then you can't forget about the top. And I was pleasantly surprised to see what Charlotte had to offer against Toronto. I hadn't done a game of theirs since League's Cup against Monterrey last summer. Mm-hmm. And man, Wilfried Zaha he doesn't seem to impress me, and not only because of the talent he has. Obviously, I mean that's something that we've seen from the Premier League, from his Crystal Palace days, Manchester United, etc. But he sacrifice work. Everything he does in the middle, goes to the trenches, tries to recover the ball, runs the counter attack. And you think about a veteran, you think about someone that has played in the most elite levels around the world, and you're like, oh, this guy's not going to come to MLS to run, right? He's just going to be there outside the box, waiting for an opportunity to score, waiting for a good pass, for a long distance shot. Well, this guy is doing it all for Charlotte FC. So that's one of the things that I was pleasantly surprised about. And obviously, one thing that we have to remark is the situation of his contract. Right. He still belongs to Galatasaray. We don't know if this will be the last time we will see Wilfried Zaha in a Charlotte jersey. And there's been a couple of cases already. You see that with James Rodriguez already, with Minnesota. This could be the end of the line. You see that. Where else did I see that? Ivan Jaime with Montreal. They brought him over from Porto, the Spanish attacker. Same thing. And this could be it also for Wilfried Zaha. So it'd be a bit of a bittersweet moment, if you will. But at the same time, he's giving it all. And then also on the mental side for the player, you always think, well, he might be gone. Why should he run? Why should he make an effort? Well, it's all the contrary. It's all the opposite. I mean, he pleasantly surprised me last weekend. And then again, not only for the talent, but also because of his work rate and his work ethic.
Yeah, and his motivation, I think, is done in a different way than you might see someone. And I know he's not the captain, but kind of the way he goes after things demands of other players to play quicker, more aggressive, kind of being in that mode because he knows kind of what it takes to get ahead and get that edge. And I know a lot of people, Charlotte fans especially, look at the yellow cards, look at the complaints and things like that. And that's the flip side of things with Zaha. But then on the other side, the motivation, the locker room, kind of like we got to be better than this kind of thing, that nastiness that sometimes can be hidden from clubs that don't outwardly show that kind of aggressiveness. So I think he pulls a lot of that weight for them.
Yeah, definitely. And you know what? You need that person who's experienced. You need that someone on the field that's going to lead by example, and that has to be him. And obviously, I mean, you're talking even about Ashley Westwood. I mean, he had to be out because of the accumulation of yellows,
Hmm.
2 weeks ago, right? So that happens. I mean, it's normal. But that
Right.
also, I mean, there's also, I mean, with all the respect, there's some dumb yellow cards every once in a while. There's dumb ejections every once in a while. But then again, most of the times you feel that that player is giving it all. And, there could be those cards, those claims, and when you're arguing with the ref, those can come for different reasons. But then again, I don't think anyone in that locker room would be against the kind of leadership that Saha brings to the field. And again, when you're leading by example, I think that speaks highly of you.
Yeah, and speaking of New England, Marko Mitrovic, like what does he do in this game? Because they have kind of slowly risen and they're one of the top
Yeah.
teams in the East. And I don't know if anybody really expected them to do this well this early. So is this the real New England team? Are they playing to their capacity? Is there a higher ceiling for them? And what do they need to do against Charlotte?
Well, there's two things that come to mind with Marco and his team. And I got to do some New England games last year as well. And one of the things that impressed me the most was the way they handled their wings. They had two young wings, or fullbacks or wingbacks, if you will. Eli Feingold on the right side and
Hmm.
Peyton Miller on the left. And Peyton, as we all know, he's the gem of this squad. He's a guy that has been approached from clubs in Europe, and he might not last in this league very long. There's been
Hmm.
interest, obviously, and some injuries have obviously slowed him down, but he's a guy that has it all and can become a fixture in U.S. soccer. But the way they play this year is very different. They're using Will Sands, who used to be with Columbus, and they
Hmm.
pushed Peyton Miller all the way to the front. So he's basically a winger now, play on the
Right.
left side. They're now using him as a starter. Feingold has been in and out of the lineup. There's been some injuries as well. And last week, for example, they used Brian Ceballos on the right, who's usually a center back. He's one of those tall, strong center backs that you're really not used to seeing in the actual days of MLS, when you need those wing backs or those full backs to have that, stop and go kind of capability, right? Those guys that defend, but at the same time, they're going to join the attack and they're going to go back and sacrifice.
Hmm.
Ceballos is not that type of guy. So I think it's going to be interesting for Charlotte, because in New England comes a bit more cautious. They're more defensive, if you will, and Charlotte have the ball. Well, then Sahav on one side, Vargas on the other side are going to be the main focal points of this offense. But then they're going to crash against good walls, I would say, with Ceballos if he still plays there, or Will Sands on the left side. So I think the way things go in the trenches, and the thing for whoever wins the battle on those flanks, I think, has a good chance to win the match. And the other thing you were saying about Marko Mitrovic, he's worked with a lot of the young players of New England before arriving in Foxborough.
Hmm.
Griffin Yao, Brooklyn Reigns, Ethan Kohler, Peyton Miller. Those are guys that he has managed either on the U20s or on the Olympic squad. So
Hmm.
I remember when I talked to him upon his arrival, he's one of, he said that's so important. I'm so happy to be working with these guys again, to see familiar faces. And I think he's very, very capable of working with young bucks, with young talents. But at the same time, you have leaders, you have veterans such as Carles Gil,
Hmm.
such as Matt Turner. And I think as a manager, especially getting your start in Major League Soccer, you have to be able to align not only with the young stars, but
Hmm.
also with the veterans. I think if he's on the same page and everybody's on the same page, I think the team is going to click. And I think that chemistry is what's helping New England right now. They're not the most talented. I mean, they're talented, but in
Hmm.
terms of roster, in terms of salaries, they're not Atlanta United. They're not
Hmm.
Inter Miami. They're not
Hmm.
LAFC, but they have a lot of different variables. And I think these two teams are very similar, as I said, where they need a lot of pieces to click.
Mhm.
where everything has to be nearly perfect for them to be successful and to keep on advancing deep into the playoffs. So I think it's going to be a very good matchup. Not only the way they can neutralize themselves because of what you mentioned, because they just faced each other 4 weeks ago, but because then again they have so many different pieces that are so interesting. But at the same time, those pieces have to click pretty much perfectly in every game.
Yeah. And a lot of times, when teams don't play each other for a long time, they develop into almost like a different style and a different team. But since
Sure.
it's only been a couple weeks, we look at that last game and it's kind of like they are still kind of playing the same. So what does Charlotte do to really make it, the difference? Because they couldn't score, but they were definitely had more possession. They did a little more pressing. They kind of had a different attitude from that game. And then what does New England do, knowing that, hey, we squeaked one out, but we really didn't have many chances either?
Well, I can tell you, I mean, when you look at Charlotte, you're going to think about Gorno. You're going to think about Zaha, even Kerwin Vargas, who's impressed me the most. I was talking to Kerwin at the end of the game. I saw him on the pitch post game, and I was reminding him about the game last year against New York City FC when he scored a goal. It was a great goal, a golazo, by the way, and he jumps up into the stairs and goes into the stands to celebrate with the fan base, and I loved it. And sometimes it's funny. I did ask Dean Smith about it because sometimes as a coach you don't like players to be showing off, but it seems
Hmm.
that everybody loved it. They understood the adrenaline and everything that goes into a player in a moment like that, interacting and sharing that happiness and that joy with the fans. So that was not an issue. And I was actually talking to Kerwin. I love his enthusiasm as well. Great guy on and off the field.
Yeah.
And he's obviously one of the focal points of this offense. But when you go from the right to the left, we obviously talked about Zaha, but there's two guys that impressed me, plenty during the last game. Bronico
Hmm.
was, I mean, a lot of times you would find him in the center of the area looking for opportunities. And Schnegg, I mean, even the goal that Schnegg scored,
Hmm.
man, it was like, I was going to say a bullet, but that thing really never took off the ground.
Yeah.
It seemed like it stayed, man. It's like, it reminded me of Back to the Future when the DeLorean accelerates
It's
and
just a
he
little
leaves the
hover.
fire marks
Yeah.
behind
Yeah.
him. Man, that thing was just like fire, right?
Yeah.
Right, stuck to the ground, man. What a shot. And he kept on attacking and defending very well. Also, he had a very, very good matchup against Henry on that left side on the defense for Charlotte. So I think those two guys, and again, you can pay attention to the forwards, even Pep Biel, Ashley Westwood, etc. But guys that can come in as in disguise as decoys like Bronico and Schnegg. I think
Hmm.
those wild cards can be so important for Charlotte when they start attacking. They're building from the back.
So if we look at New England side, what is going to make it a long day for Charlotte if New England is able to do what?
I think the quick connections between Luca Langoni and Carles Gil, especially the give and goes, the quick first touches. I think when Carles Gil gets the ball, he's usually marked because I think, especially Dean Smith and his experience, playing in England, coaching the Premier League, he knows that he's going to have two or three pieces marking Carles Gil the moment he gets the ball, right?
Hmm.
So if he gets the ball facing the area, facing goal, then that's going to be a problem for Charlotte. You're going to need to have him, posting up with his back to the net to make sure he's not successful. And the moment he touches the ball, he's going to need to go back. Maybe Brooklyn Reigns that he can't connect with Langoni right away. And I
Hmm.
think to me, that's the biggest piece on the attack for New England is that connection between Langoni and Carles Gil. Obviously, if you go to the left side, and we talked about that gem, one of my favorite players right now in MLS, Peyton Miller,
Hmm.
the way he starts on the attack, sometimes they switch out a lot. Langoni might have the ball, or Brooklyn Reigns behind him might have the ball, and they're going to switch out to the left. And then that starts another journey, another different stage on the attack for New England. That might take a little bit shorter time for Charlotte to adjust when they switch out. But then the problem, and then once again for Charlotte, is the moment Hill connects quickly with Langoni, because also Hill likes to play close to the right flank because he can come in inverted and he has a wicked left touch, right? So for him starting on the right and moving diagonally towards the area and shooting from long range, that brings a lot of problems
Hmm.
to Charlotte. So then again, if you're able as Charlotte to limit that first touch, that quick connection, that give and go, or that 1-2 touch between Langoni and Carles Gil, you're going to be in a good position. If you can't, if you're going to let Carles Gil take the ball, first touch, facing the net, then that's going to bring you problems.
Yeah. Yeah. On the other side, I feel like Pep Biel. I did some research this week on him and just his touches and his forward passes and things like that. And it's better when he has the ball less and has passes less also because that means he's playing more direct. He's having more chances. He's kind of risking it a little bit. If he's back there having to get the ball, it means the other team's pressing and that he's making like more horizontal passes and not forward direct passes. So I look for him to kind of be a little more riskier and try some of those through balls that really make the difference. So I think that would be the difference in for New England is if Pep can get to those balls to either the wings in spots where they have an advantage, not only off the counter, but also another area. So I think Pep is just like Carlos in the same situation. You don't want him facing the ball, facing the goal, and just going.
Yeah, one of the great things I like about Pep is his resume and his experience. I mean, looking at the list, he's played in Spain, he's played in Denmark, he's played in Greece, he's played in Germany, and he came to MLS 2 years ago. And you can tell that this guy is seasoned and
Mm-hmm.
he's got the experience. And not only is he a very good offensive asset, but he can be in the trenches. He can be hitting when you need to hit. He can be pressuring when you need pressure. He's fouling when you need to foul. And he's a guy that's also not afraid to go in the trenches and fight for possession. And I think that's so important for him. And I think those two-way kind of players in MLS are crucial for any team because with Ashley Westwood, yeah, he has some projection up in the attack, but you know how his value is going to be being that main guy defending, right? Being that
Right.
main guy, maybe starting the build-up. But with Pep, with the two-way capabilities that he shows, I think he's so experienced and so important, so crucial to this side. And as you mentioned, this is a guy that can put a ball through for Kerwin Vargas if they're able to connect on the right. And you know what Kerwin can do. I mean, obviously you saw him with 2 assists, the way he's able to not only shoot with both feet, he
Mm-hmm.
handles both feet very, very well, but at the same time, he can switch out to the left side and look for Saha. But a lot of that starts with Pep Biel. And
Yeah.
I think he's so important to this side. I haven't been able to touch base with him. I'm going to try to go on the pitch and have a quick word with him because I
Yeah.
really, really enjoy his style. And that he's that guy. Then
Mm-hmm.
again, that when you think about Charlotte, obviously Kalina, former goalkeeper of the year, right?
Mm-hmm.
Ashley Westwood, Aston
Right.
Villa, Wilfred Zaha, Manchester United, etc. But I wouldn't say right under the shadow. I would say, Pep Biel is one of those anonymous heroes, if you will,
Mm-hmm.
that if you don't see or you watch Charlotte FC that often, you won't get to notice. But
Yeah.
when you see him for more than 30 minutes, when you see more than the highlights, you can tell what his real value is. So he's definitely one of my favorite players in the squad.
Yeah, and you also mentioned Vargas. I think we saw a little bit of different cadence to how Vargas was playing. He wasn't in Toronto match. He kind of did things he wasn't typical of. So like the expectation was that he might go to the line, but no, he would cut in early. So he
Mm-hmm.
kind of altered his game a little bit and played a little bit more. I don't know if it's more free, but just basically more like I'm not going to do what you think I'm going to do. He made them
Sure.
second guess what was going to happen, and that he took advantage of that with those assists and also just the way he was able to make some inroads.
Well, he had 3 shots on, that were very close to goal. Actually,
Yeah.
yeah. And you look at his face, he's like, "Yeah, I had it. I had it. I should have scored." And I think it's the ambidextrous part of him that the way he handles both feet, both profiles, that he's able to do exactly what you said. You don't know exactly what this guy is going to do because if I pressure him, he's going to cut back and he's probably going to shoot with the left. If I give him some room, there he's probably going to go all the way to the end line and he's going to cross with the right. Right. So then again,
Hmm.
these are some different opportunities, different roles that he can take. He can be the guy that goes all the way to the line and he centers, or he can be the guy that he crosses inside and he cuts back and he shoots with the left. So that makes it so hard because one of the assists, the one that comes to mind, is when he switched out to the left side, and I believe it was Bronico that came from behind and wasn't able to make contact with the ball, but there was Wilfred Zaha. He
Hmm.
takes it, easy shot, right, near post, right?
Hmm.
So then again, he can kill you in so many different ways. And I think especially when you make him a focal point of the offense, I'm not going to say you worry less, but you have to use maybe 1 or 2 guys to go right at him and put some pressure. And that obviously pulls the marking from Gorno, from Saha, and that gives his teammates opportunities. So I was also very impressed with Vargas and the way he's able to pull that marking and create chances for his teammates.
Yeah. Let's switch a little bit from this match and just talk about you and what you've been able to do. As I mentioned in the opening, multi-sport background, covered lots of different sports in all different leagues at the highest level. When you're doing a match like this, and I know you're focused and prepared for MLS and doing this stuff, but do you start pulling in all your other kind of things that you've done, like with the hockey and NBA and NFL, just all those things? Does it kind of swirl in your head, or is it just like, all right, my soccer mind, and I just focus? Like, how do you square that?
Well, it's interesting, and one of the things that makes me the proudest is the fact that last year in 2025, I basically became the only person in the U.S. that has done all five U.S. Major leagues in just 1 year. Right? I did everything when I came back to baseball to work for the Atlanta Braves because I hadn't done baseball in a while. So I'd been doing four sports for a little bit, but I
Hmm.
hadn't done baseball in 6, 7 years. So when I came back to MLB and did that, I was very proud to become that person that has, because I think there's a couple people that have done it, but in different years, in different stretches.
Hmm.
And that is when the bigger problem becomes really not your preparation, but how you juggle your schedule, right? There's
Hmm.
a lot of teams that I work with in 2025 where I didn't do the whole schedule per se, and that obviously helped me. I mean, it would have been completely impossible to do the full slate, but I was able to at least do a good share of games for every sport. And it's funny what you mentioned, and that made me think. The first thing that comes to mind is I've been able to do some games on the English side as well. I've done 3 games
Hmm.
in the past couple of months, and when I'm going through it, I'm like, what's gonna be my signature goal call? Do I scream the goal, or do I go with something different? And you know what comes right away? I swear to you, it's the he scores. It's just like hockey, right? And
Right,
even
right.
though I've only done a handful of games in English for the Kings and for their AHL affiliate, the Ontario Reign, but at the
Mhm.
same time, that's always something that sticks in your head, right? And
Right.
so I tended, yeah, I tend to just mix them up a little bit and go with when he scores, and if it goes special, probably I won't do it in a 5-1. But
Hmm.
if the game's tied and there's a special moment, or if it's a golazo, I'll probably go with goal. So those are some of the things I think culturally speaking, I tend to integrate some of the things that I can bring from one side to the other. In terms of other sports, obviously I've done a lot of Panthers games. I
Hmm.
actually did that season. It was 2015 when they got to the Super Bowl against the Broncos. I was
Hmm.
working for Fox Sports at the time, so I did all of their playoff games all up until the NFC championship game. So
Hmm.
you know what? When I'm brought back to Charlotte, I think Luke Kuechly, I think Cam Newton, I
Hmm.
think Greg Olson. I had a chance to actually meet Mike Tolbert, former fullback for the
Yeah.
Panthers, who was one of the best fullbacks in the league in the last couple of decades. And I actually met him at a boxing match
Oh,
in
wow.
Southern California, out of all places, in India, which is very close to Coachella, where they have the big Coachella festival. For
Hmm.
whatever reason, he was there and we got to talk for a little bit. And I told him, hey, man, I've done a lot of your NFL games in Spanish. And, we got to chat for a little bit. So those are the things that I think of. And those are the things that I like to integrate. And I've done a few games also. I covered the Mexican national team for FS1 and for Fox Soccer for a few years too. And then I was there for a Mexico against Trinidad and Tobago game in 2015. And I
So
remember,
I was going
so
to say,
go
so
ahead.
speaking of Mexico, the national team, they're down to basically two spots left. What is Javier Aguirre going to do with these last two spots, right? He's got two, two,
Nobody,
two players to fill.
nobody knows, man. It's so crazy, especially with Javier. He's unpredictable at times. He's that kind of guy that he's going to surprise you with a wild card. So yeah. Once again, I think of Charlotte, and I think of the Mexico national team because the first time that I was there
Hmm.
physically in Charlotte, I was there for a Gold Cup game in 2015. I had one of my best friends from high school in Mexico City. For whatever reason, don't ask me why, he moved to Greenville, South Carolina. So I was able to invite him to a game. He came with his mom, of all people, and it was just amazing. We actually stayed. We didn't stay in Charlotte, but we stayed in this resort about 20-25 minutes outside of the Charlotte area. It was this luxury resort with a
Hmm.
huge golf course where Mexico State actually, and I was able to stay in that hotel too. You couldn't even come in if you just hunting for an autograph or anything. So that was pretty special going back to those days. And another thing, then again, when you talk about other sports, I tend to observe a lot,
Hmm.
and I look at the people below me in the stands, and there was a guy that actually stood out because he had a Muggsy Bogues jersey,
Hmm.
right? And there were two teams that I really followed when I was a kid. Obviously, in Mexico City, we didn't have an NBA team. There were two teams that I really followed because I like the players: the Utah Jazz because of Karl Malone, John Stockton, and the
Hmm.
Charlotte Hornets. Alonzo Mourning, Muggsy Bogues, Larry Johnson,
Yeah.
Del Curry. Everyone's crazy about Steph Curry, but I'm like, I saw his dad playing. He was a
He was
wicked
amazing.
three-point shooter, right?
Yeah.
He was incredible. And that jersey, I can tell there was a fixation with Mexico City and the Hornets. Don't ask me why. I think
Hmm.
it's the Hornet. It might be the colors, but even my wife, we met in middle school. She also had a Charlotte Hornets hat.
Oh, get
And
out.
there's something that we share. And, you're going to believe this. There's a picture that we shared at Universal Studios in California. We didn't know each other at the time. We're with this huge figure of Jaws, where you go inside the mouth, basically.
Hmm.
She had a Hornets hat, and I have the same picture about a year removed with a Hornets hat.
Get out.
So
That's
then again,
crazy.
there's this fixation with Mexico City and the Hornets because that uniform was so popular, more than you can think of. And obviously, going back to the NBA days in the mid '90s, yeah, Michael Jordan, and then the Lakers, it started Kobe Bryant, and the Spurs and the Rockets, Will Olajuwon, etc. But there was that thing about Mexico and the Hornets, even though they never really went to play in
Hmm.
Mexico City and we didn't see them. So when I think about the other sports, it's that I've called and about going back to my childhood days and going back to a city. I like to bring all those memories, and because when I used to listen to commentary when I was little, I always like those guys that would share stories with you, that would give a
Hmm.
little background. I'm not gonna say it's easier now because you have the internet, because all these memories and those things that I might be telling you, those are things that are stuck in my head because I lived them as a kid, or
Right.
because my dad relayed them for me, or I learned them because of a relative or a friend. Right, it's easier now because of the internet, but those are things that I like to do. One thing that I can tell you, I walked back to the hotel after I was done. I was there in the Omni. It was like a 12-minute walk. Pretty
Yeah.
nice walk. The weather was amazing. I saw the baseball stadium right there.
Hmm.
And the first thing that I did, I climbed like on a wall. It was a small wall where you can get to basically there's like a fence, like
Yeah. And you
gates,
can see
and I took
inside. Yeah.
pictures. I can see inside. I took a video for my dad, who actually installed that love of baseball for me. So those are things that I like to do. And if I'm not mistaken, Charlotte used to be the AAA team for the White Sox. I'm
Right.
not sure if that's
Yep.
still the case,
Yep. They
but
are.
there's so many great names that pass through Charlotte. So then again, those things are what I like to integrate on my broadcast. Give you a little bit more of just a soccer match itself. I mean, obviously, I have to pay
Hmm.
respects to all the guys that are playing the game, that are doing their best. But at the same time, I think there's a little space for pop culture. There's a
Yeah.
little space for integrating other sports and making sure someone, because now we're global with MLS and Apple TV. We're not
Yeah.
only broadcasting to the States, right? So if there's
Yeah.
someone watching from Mexico, there's someone watching from Colombia, watching Kerwin, for example, why not, tell people from Colombia who've never been to Charlotte,
Right.
there's much more than just a soccer. That it's not even just a soccer pitch per se. It's
Right.
Bank of America Stadium. It has a huge panther outside, which is very impressive when you're walking into the stadium that has the Panthers that have done so well in the last few years, etc. So there's a lot of, even the food. There's a lot of the things that you're going to try to do as a commentator, as a broadcaster, to try to make sure you keep people hooked. Because right now, attention spans with everyone, including myself, they're so short. So you need
Yeah.
to do something, look for hooks, look for ways to keep people embedded or just close to your broadcast.
Yeah. You're kind of that ambassador in a way of sharing the goodwill of what's going on with these sports and this sport happening in these cities.
Yeah.
I want to ask you, when you're doing a match, kind of last personal question, when you're doing a match, have you ever had it so like the atmosphere was so crazy and something happening that you almost like forgot you were covering the match because you were just like so much caught in the moment?
I think it happens more before and after the game.
Yeah.
And I can tell you there's moments when, New England is a great example. When they win, they play Dream On at the end. And
Hmm.
had I not been a broadcaster, I would have been a musician. I love music. I love writing. I love singing. I love playing, etc. And music is a big part of my life. And that's what I'm telling you when I mention pop culture, right? You
Hmm.
got to talk about the singers. You need to talk about the groups, etc. At least I do it. And for example, in Boston, they start playing Dream On at the end. And it's kind of like I'm doing post game at the time. and I try to wait as long as I can before commercial, and I start filming that thing, and I might send it to my friends in Mexico or send it to my nephews that play guitar as well. And those are the moments that I try to share. I can't forget that I'm there, because if I do, I'm lost. They're going to be
Yeah.
like, "Hey, you missed your sponsor," or "We had an ad right here," especially on a bumping from commercial. But those are the things that inspire me. Something that's very special to me. Even last weekend, for example, we had Charlotte and Toronto. I had family in Toronto. I have nephews that were born in Canada, and seeing the anthem, not only the U.S. anthem but also the Canadian anthem. I try to film it when I can and send it to my family in Canada as well.
Nice.
So to me, I think those are the moments. I don't think I lose it. I think works the other way. The more the fans are into it, the more the louder it gets. I think, to me, it gets more intimate. It gets more personal. I get more entrenched in the game. One of the things, I'm not leaving Charlotte behind. What I saw last week and the ritual before the game, when everyone's gives their back to the pitch and they actually
Closing in.
started
Yeah.
looking towards me.
Yeah.
And they had I don't know which Latino singer it was, more of a rock guy, that Latin music type of guy. I don't know if it's Bad Bunny or Pitbull. I'm not 100% sure of the song, but when they started doing that, I hadn't been there in a year, going back to Leagues Cup, but I'm like, this is amazing, and that's where I get lost. It's not a great game or the fan base or how loud it is. It's the music that can actually get me lost, and I think
Yeah.
that's a perfect example. It was like, oh my god, I like to admire what I'm seeing. I'd love to be part of the game. When I was working for LAFC, their north end, the 3252, which is standing only right behind one of the goals. It's one of the best experiences of all sports in LA. And I remember I told myself I have to actually live that, at least once in my life when I'm not calling a game. And there was
Right. Like just
I
go be
had
a
a
part
chance
of
to
it.
do it.
Yeah.
I think it was a cup game or a national game that was not broadcasting regionally. And at the time, I actually broke my elbow skating, and I actually had some kind of protection there, so I couldn't jump. I couldn't do it. Well, the guys next to me didn't give a crap. They didn't care, right? So they were jumping, pushing me, and there was a guy that tossed a beer, and I was wearing my brand new LAFC jersey with my name in the back. I'm like, oh, man, how am I going to watch this? But then again, it's those moments that sometimes, as a broadcaster, you want to be there. You want to be, entrenched with the fans. You want to be there, and sometimes, that's happened with me in baseball. Sometimes when I do a baseball in Spanish and I've done World Series, they don't have enough booths, and sometimes they just they build auxiliary boxes to put you right there in the stands.
Oh,
And sometimes
wow.
that's pretty cool because you're there by people. Like
Yeah.
it happened to me in St. Louis a few years back, in Detroit, and then you're right there by the fans, and that energy is very special. And the thing with Charlotte being an NFL stadium, I really like calling games in NFL stadiums because the booth location is always amazing. Most of the times at the 50-yard line, and the fans are right there below you. So
Yeah.
that makes it really special, and you're able to observe and get lost in that moment, as I said. But then again, to me, it's not about the game itself. I try to keep myself as focused as possible, but it's about the music. It's about the ritual. It's about the environment. It's about what happens. I like to observe and always mention it and give credit to all the fans that do an amazing job, and also the in-game entertainment team that chooses the right songs, that creates that
Right.
ritual. That I
Right.
think those guys deserve a lot of credit as well.
Right. And I mean, you're calling the game and you're doing work, but you're also a fan of the game, so you might as well enjoy it too, right?
I mean, you get paid to go do something that when you're young, you could have done it for free, or you're like, yeah, you get into a Major League Soccer stadium or into any other sport. And one of the things too that before wrapping up, that I want to mention too, last Saturday was a very special moment for me. I think my last two trips to Charlotte have been very special because during Leagues Cup last year, I got to meet Sergio Ramos. We have a friend in common, and he
Yes.
told me what to say when I saw Sergio when he was walking after the bus arrival. And I knew what to say. He took off his headphones, spoke to me. He was very gracious, and I knew what
Nice.
to say. So he started laughing about it. And then talking about the Mexico national team, Tecatito Corona, Jesus Tecatito Corona, one of the stars for Monterrey.
Yeah.
He was a young buck during that 2015 Gold Cup game. I didn't bring for the press conference. No, we had a mix on because we had the rights for FS1. So he was not Andres Guardado or Raul Jimenez of any of the stars back then. It was actually Tecatito Corona who was wearing number 9. And then when he was coming in with Monterrey during bus arrivals, I show him the picture. I'm like, dude, we met here about 10 years ago when you were a young starter for the Mexican national team, you scored once or twice against Trinidad and Tobago, and it happened at this very stadium, which was pretty cool. And the other story, last weekend, as you know, I didn't start with LAFC, but I spent 5 years with them before this transition into Apple.
Mm-hmm.
There were three guys, 3/5 of that LAFC defense last Saturday at Bank of America Stadium. Tyler Miller, obviously, who's your sub goalie now, behind Kalina, but Steven Beitasher, who was the right back, he came in with Toronto. Walker Zimmerman, former defender of the year, came in with Toronto as well. So I approached them. We gave each other a big hug. We took pictures. I sent them to some of the guys in LA. And I'm like, I can't believe that for whatever reason, call it a coincidence or not, you have 3/5 of that first LAFC defense in that inaugural 2018 year. So those are the things that, to me, leaving the game aside and talking about music and pop culture, etc., those moments are what I keep really in my head, because nobody really knows. Nothing's for sure. You don't take things for granted, right? Because you don't know tomorrow's your live broadcast. I'm not saying it's going to be, but you don't know. And those pictures, those moments that you keep in your head, that's what you keep. And then every time I come to Charlotte moving forward, those are the things that I'm going to remember. So I think last Saturday was super special for me, seeing a lot of guys that I hadn't seen in a while. And it was just super cool to get to catch up with.
Fantastic. All right. So this is kind of your last call here. If you're not last call in doing, but last question. So what is going to be the dominant talk at the end of the match? What are we going to get out of it? What are people going to be talking about this game? Is there some sort of thing that you kind of expect to be the thread line or the headline from it?
I think it's going to be an exciting game, man. I mean, the 3-1 score against Toronto, I'm not going to say it was deceiving, but there was this goal that was disallowed against Toronto where they could have gone 2-1. And I think, with so many injuries, they were physically and mentally exhausted, and that showed in the second half. But while they could keep it together, it was a very, very even match. And we could have had 6-7 goals. Kerwin couldn't hit the net in a couple. And New England, then again, they're a team that if they allow the other team to have the ball and then they counter press and they counterattack, they can be successful. So I think if I can forecast, I think I'm going for the talk being we're going to have a lot of goals this time. I think at least 5. We can easily have at least 5 with the firepower that we have on each side. And I'm hoping then again
that's more fun for you, right?
Raspy, exactly. Sometimes I lose my voice, and that's one of the things, and it's natural. It is what it is. I try to take care of my voice and my throat, have some tea when I can, some lemon, etc. But there's times that when the game brings you, and you were talking about getting lost into the game, sometimes the game is just impossible to get away from that and to scream and to enjoy and to get hooked in the game. So I hope that happens for me this time. And then again, I'm not going to be calling any soccer until the second half of the season with MLS, what I do with Liga MX, etc. So what the heck? Let's enjoy it. And I hope the guys will give me a lot of reasons to be happy this Saturday.
All right. Well, thanks a lot, man. Appreciate everything. And good luck, and I'll see you on Saturday.
Thanks.
This is Nick Vanelli with the Charlotte FC podcast. Thanks to Francisco X Rivera for taking us behind the mic for the first sip for this New England Charlotte match before the World Cup. You can catch his call this Saturday night on MLS on Apple TV, Spanish language broadcast. Kickoff is streaming live at 7:30 p.m. Till next time, enjoy the day.